Hey Stanford, welcome to part two.
Yeah, excited. We going again.
I know it's we covered exercise before, didn't we? We started to look at yoga and exercise, what was best before, and we kind of came up with a number of ideas. The first idea is that exercise and yoga are very different from one another. So we've understood that there's a difference between these two things. What I'm keen to know more about today is I'm keen to understand just a little bit more about exercise and also sort of the parallels between exercise and yoga in different ways.
Hmm.
Um, so where do we start?
I'm not sure because I think last time, as you said, we talked a lot about the transferable skills from yoga and how
Mm,
actually the awareness can add to exercise as well as a lot of other things we do in life.
mm.
But I guess in some way, maybe shall we start from what actually exercise can bring to the other parts of our life to start? Because that may be quite a little bit of a nice contrast.
Mm,
Um, I think from a more personal experience as well as evidence, I think exercise really helps to strengthen the body.
mm,
If used properly, can really help to maintain and develop our body of physicality.
mm.
But also another big thing that I think as a psychiatrist, as a practicing psychiatrist, we almost use the is it the endorphin side of exercise as well? Because when we exercise, our body actually kind of enjoys it, even though it can be a very grilling routine. It can be a very, very sweaty and hot and breathless routine. But actually, it also, stimulates our brain to give out this, hormone that's endorphin that tells us, we've done something good. We've done a good job about it. So there's a feel good effect as well.
So it it really means that when we're starting to look at exercise, we're defining it, which is associated with actually the effects that it has on us, or we exercise for different effects.
Hmm, absolutely. And I guess another definition is you exercise, at least in the Western medicine, explanation is a movement of the body to
Mm,
various severity and vigorousness, and also within a certain time frame. Because nowadays there are more and more different routines. Some routine is much more vigorous, but at a shorter interval.
mm,
Some routine is much more sustained and in terms of the severity and how vigorous the exercise is, but also for a longer period of time.
mm,
I guess in the simplest term, which is what I learned in school, is aerobic exercise and anaerobic exercise. Because when
mm.
you do exercise that in a not so strenuous way, but for more longer sustained period of time, your body has more time to actually breathe and utilize the oxygen that we take in. So
Right.
the muscles and everything have time to actually respire and utilize energy from our food sources, carbohydrate, maybe fat stores in our body to actually provide the energy. So it's much more sustainable. At the same time, if you do it much more vigorously and for a shorter period of time, it goes into this anaerobic rhythm where actually the body or the cells doesn't have enough time to use all the energy because it's actually quite a lengthy process. You need to go into the anaerobic side, which is much faster, but it's less energy efficient. So that kind of will be the broad sense on how we can define exercise as well.
Interesting. So if I define yoga postures, so if I start, the root of the word actually is to be present. So when we're looking at yoga postures, you've got this idea of asana, and that comes from this the root to be present. And there's a text called the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Um, it gives a definition of asana, and it says that asana practice brings increased steadiness and less illness and lightness. So it means that actually the practice of the physical aspects of it are there for both the mental and physical makeup. So that kind of ties in with what you were saying with regard to exercise.
Hmm.
However, there's a few other definitions which I quite of really like. One is this idea of Sharira Anga Vinyasa. It means that it's a special arrangement of the body parts. And we covered this last time. It means that it's something that you don't normally do. And that
Hmm.
actually defines it. So it's about approaching things. And when we think about that, it's a physical approach or even a mental approach in things in life. It's about approaching things in a way that you wouldn't normally do them. Because what often we do, and we approach everything in exactly the same way, whether it's our relationships, whether it's ourselves, whether it's our work, we actually approach it in exactly the same way. We apply the same patterns again and again and again. So here it's about learning something different. It's not about being a ballerina within yoga. It's about learning about how to arrange the body in a very different way and working in a very different way to break those patterns that you've got. And that includes working with the mind. So does that make sense? So that I like that definition.
Yeah, or if you're a ballerina, you may do similar kind of posture or movement that you will do in ballerina as in a yoga practice, but the focus may be slightly different. So you learn something different about how to use your body.
And what that means is it means that either your application of the tools of yoga, which is asana, they either help with you to understand and have an awareness of the patterns that you've got and to change something. Because if you think about it, most of us actually want to evolve and change. What we do is we use a tool and it actually increases the pattern we've got. It's kind of interesting when you think about the basis of this. The other definition I really like, there's another definition I like called Nava Sharira Samskara. This is about creating new body patterns, a new pattern for the body, a new way of working for the body. And this for me is also interesting as well, is that it's, I tell you, for the first year and a half of riding a horse, I fell off. Okay. And actually it's about creating a new body pattern. So it's how do I put these new patterns in place? And one of the purposes, and I think what we're looking at here is when we're looking at defining something, it's like it gives it reason. There's a good reason why we're actually coming to do something. And it means that the form of the yoga that we take should serve a function. And actually, that's what defines it. It has to serve a function.
I find it very interesting because when you spoke about changing pattern, doing something that's unusual, it brought up many, many thoughts. The first one is that's so true, but because when I'm doing psychiatry in mental health or in my clinic room, what I often suggest my patient to do is actually try something new, like go swimming or go walking in the countryside or go cycling. It's almost like as long as it's not something that they are used to, it kind of helps them to take their mind off whatever problem that they're going through.
Right.
Which is not to say to ignore the issues and think, oh, those issues no longer exist and you can just move on. It's like, it's actually, as you said, you're kind of replacing the existing pattern a little bit so you can give you somewhat new insight and break out the cycle a little bit, because you know how it is sometimes when you are sad, let's per se, everything seems to be a catastrophe and you really, really, really want to get out of it, but at the same time you feel very hopeless and helpless. But actually, if we manage to come out of the cycle a little bit, actually sometimes it make it a bit easier to realize actually it's not that bad. There are other things that we can do, or there's other possibility out there. Right. So that's one thought.
So there's goals associated with this as well. So both within this is that when we're defining things, there's exercise often has goals associated with it, doesn't it? And with goals, there's also there's outcomes. So so we automatically we put in place goals and we put in place outcomes with regard to our exercise practice.
And that related to my second thoughts, because I think when we go exercise, a lot of the time we have goals to, let's say if people want to go to the gym, or we want to go to the gym, we want to achieve a certain physique, or we want to bench certain amounts. Sometimes, I don't know, as both a doctor and yoga teacher, I hear that people seem to hit a wall every now and then. It's like they've been doing a certain practice or a routine or going to see a personal trainer for so long. Somehow, after a period of time of really good sustained working with it, there doesn't seem to be any more changes. They kind of hit the goal, but then there's also a barrier. There's also a wall where it's like, I don't feel like I'm progressing anymore. Actually, what you said was very interesting, and I think we have discussed about this a few times before, is like there needs to be evolution, it needs to have a change, because
Mm,
we're so used to a certain pattern, like you're so used to doing squat in a certain way or swimming lane in a certain way, you actually need to change it slightly, and then maybe then the practice will be, or the exercise will be beneficial to you again. My own example is when I was a kid, I
mm,
was so scared of water. One of the adults who looked after me for tried to get me to learn how to swim by throwing me into the swimming pool. So I literally struggled and almost drowned for like about a minute. So it wasn't long. The swimming pool wasn't actually that deep either. But I got really, really scared of the water.
mm,
And my mom's like, no, 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 you can't be scared of water for the rest of your life. You need to know the skill. So actually put me into a swim class. Actually, might have been 2 or 3 different swim classes, and eventually I learned how to swim. I end up falling in love with it because it's so freeing. It's like you are the gravity has been taken away. You're floating in water, actually can move in water. It's a really, really good feeling. And I go swimming very, very regularly. But then there's a period of about 5 to 7 years that I haven't got a chance to go back to swimming because I live in London. And then when I gone back, I realized, oh my God, I don't quite know how to move. My shoulders hurting. Actually, moving in water make me very nauseous, dizzy. And I actually realized, oh, this is an exercise you used to really, really enjoy. But because I'm so out of practice, I need to come back into it. I need to relearn it again. And
mm,
that relearning gave me so much insight
mm.
to myself and my body.
So really what we're starting to do is that the function of these things becomes very important. And when we're defining it, it's relating to one's approach to the activity that we're doing as a whole. And when we're looking at goals, because I've had, I think goals and outcomes are very important. And I think, interestingly, in a way, I've heard many, many times people say, well, goals are bad, aren't they? Outcomes are bad, because you're holding on to something and it causes a bit of an issue when you get to it. But then goals are good because you find yourself in a position where you think, actually, an exercise wise, I want to run 10K or I want to run, 20K, or I
Mm,
want to do this or I want to do that. So you set yourself a goal to motivate yourself to do something.
mm,
But if we apply that same goal, I want to do Ekapada Rajakaputasana, it's a very interesting position.
mm-hmm. Also a
It's
mouthful.
Yeah, king pigeon. So it's the one where you leg and you're holding the arms up over the head, and the head goes to the foot in this way. And if that's the goal, then we're actually taking the same pattern and we're applying that same pattern from the 20K into the asana.
Mm,
However, what if I could do it slightly differently? What if actually my goal while I was going on this is to create and have an awareness about how I'm interacting with myself,
mm,
how I'm interacting with other people. And so actually what happens is that the use of the body becomes an understanding because it's the tool that we use to interact with ourselves and interact with other people. And it teaches us everything based on how we interact with it.
mm.
So instead of there being a goal, which is a goal, like 20K, 30K,
Instead
it's
of just a number.
yeah, it's a different thing. It's a different way of looking at goals and also looking at the function of things. And the forms that they're taking are there to suit those things.
Mm. And I think that fits in with my swimming example as well, because what I used to do years ago, decades ago, I would go to swimming pool once a week and then I swim 20 laps. And it, as you say, it almost become like a number. It's like I go and I do that. And that's once I'm done, I get out, I can go get a croissant and coffee and move on with my day. Well,
Mm,
I was actually coming back this time to swimming. I wanted to get back to the 20 because that's the number I always get to. But one, I couldn't because I'm out of breath, and two, I'm quite dizzy. I actually realized instead of pushing myself to get the 20, what I need to do is actually learn how to move in water again, how to breathe, and how not to drown, and
mm,
how not to embarrass myself too much in a swimming pool. and that was very, very interesting. I think I managed like about 16 in the end, so not too bad. But that actually the experience of it was actually more fun, and that almost reminded me when I first learned swimming. And that's what I completely agree. It's actually the experience of it that brought me joy rather than the number.
mm.
The other question I have is with the goal as well, because sometimes is goal bad because we just want to push the number. Because as you said, sometimes you start with 10Ks and the next one will be 20K and 30K, and then you run a marathon or more marathon or triathlon. It's more always better.
But doesn't a goal give you a direction? You know, again, it's our relationship with the word. Let's take an example. If I'm working with someone, they say, okay, my goal is to get through the week without drinking any alcohol at all. But on Saturday, I can reward myself and have a drink. And actually, what happens is on Saturday, they do more than reward themselves and have a drink. They actually get absolutely hammered and fall over.
Yeah.
But the fact is that what they did is for that whole week, they didn't drink. So for me, there's an interesting thing around this idea of goal, putting a line in the ground. And all of us tend to put lines in the ground. And those lines in the ground we hold on to very strongly. And then we focus on those lines in the ground because we look at them and we think, actually, if so-and-so can do this, I can do this. If I can get to that point there, that's really good for me. If I can do... So in one way, it's fantastic. But in another way, you can actually see the trap that we create for ourselves.
Can be limiting. It's very interesting. I also think we not only put the line for ourselves to begin with, sometimes we put the line in the sand years ago, and we may have either achieved or not achieved it. But years later, we want to repeat it again. Similar to what my swimming example is, like mine was 20 laps and I have to go back to it. I was speaking to someone today and it was interesting. And she's a little bit older, so around my age, talking about issues that we're facing at work at the moment. And she's like, I graduated from a very good university back in the days. I'm passed with merit. I should be able to do this. Like, yeah, I completely agree. But it's also a very interesting example to bring up as well, because we are quite a few years since our university days. Is that the same attitude? Is that the same goals that we want to hold ourselves to sometimes? It did make me question. Another question about exercise, well, or another definition of exercise from the Western point of view is weight bearing or non-weight bearing.
Okay.
Some say weight bearing is better because, especially as we get older, I think there's an encouragement from scientists or from physicians. Weight bearing is good because actually it helps to strengthen our bone. The weight itself on our body signals to the bone, which is the weight bearing part a lot of the time, because the skeletal system of our body, that it needs to strengthen, it needs to be able to bear the extra load. So it actually helps us to maintain the density of the bone. So actually there is a bit of encouragement from the science point of view that actually as we get older we need to weight bear a little bit gently and gradually so that we don't crush ourselves. But at the same time, weight bearing seems to also cause a lot of issues, because sometimes when we are weight bearing, especially with the inappropriate amounts and we're doing inappropriate things, we can grind and wear and tear our joints a lot more because they are quite strong and almost in some exercise quite harsh on the joints, especially to the knees.
Okay, so we have a definition within yoga called Sharira Rakshana. It's a purpose of actually doing different positions, and it's to maintain, protect, and nourish the body, and to retain the energy that you actually have. So it's not to exhaust you, but it's also to understand, again, this idea of not pushing ligaments and tendons, not overstretching, not creating issues where we grind into the joints in a way, but it's to keep the spine very, very mobile. Not over mobile, not under mobile, but just to keep the mobility within the spine. And I also, what you just said also reminds me of almost the first thing that we said the last time we spoke, which is to do with overuse or underuse. And so we've got overuse or underuse. We've got the capacity to move or the capacity to stay in things, so static in things. And if you look at exercise-based stuff, we have the same thing. the capacity to move or the capacity to say in various different things. How much is too much? How much is too little? And I think this is also what we need to do, is to understand that too much, how do we understand that too much causes damage and too little, actually nothing comes from it? What's the point in doing it?
Mm.
So I think that as part of this, in the direction that you're taking right now, is that exercise is very good for actually maintaining and protecting the body. But our approach to it, like our approach with yoga asana, becomes very important. It's a tool. And either you can use that tool to increase the issues that there are, let's say, issues within the knee joints, issues within the shoulder joints, issues in the neck, issues in the lower back. Or what it can do is it can help to maintain and protect that area. So it means that there actually needs to be an individual application of yoga positions to a person. But I would also recommend that with exercise as well. That individual application needs to happen too, because if we're looking to protect ourselves, to maintain ourselves, we need that individual approach.
Yeah. And I also was thinking about this today, and I'm gonna use your definition a little bit as well, because I think when we were doing training together, you told me before, use of props in the yoga practice, the utilization of props is actually to help our body to achieve things that we won't normally able to achieve. Did I get that right? So almost in some way, the weight that we're bearing in exercise is almost like a prop as well, isn't it? Like it helps us to achieve a certain shape, a certain strength, a certain limit almost that we may not be able to achieve just with our own body weight or without the weight.
Right.
So I wonder what it is that we're trying to achieve. What is the things that we're not meant to have without that prop of weight, and what will be the result of having that ability?
But this is, again, the question around the prop, because what's the use of the prop? And is the prop there because it helps, let's say, when you're sitting down cross-legged and you put a couple of blocks underneath you and it helps to lift you up so your spine's straight and there's no pain in your knees? Or is it that the prop actually allows you to do something that naturally your body couldn't do and is providing a limit on you to do, like, let's say, headstand or shoulder stand? So the question becomes, is about the prop, is when's the prop useful and when's the prop not useful? When does the prop actually support your evolution and help you to get somewhere? Or when does the prop actually mean that the body can do something that it ought not to do because there's a limit on what the body can do?
Or another thought is, it's the prop allowing us to fit in. So I was teaching a yoga class recently, and we had this lengthy chat with a few of the students before the beginning of the class, about how to sit. And as you said, sometimes actually it helps so much by sitting on a couple of blocks or just a little bit of a block, so that the hips is elevated, the knees are lower, and actually can sit in a cross-legged position much more comfortable. But there's a few students that I saw who has a lot of tension around the back, around the shoulders area. Actually, cross-legged just doesn't look a very comfortable position altogether, because when they try to do cross-legged, their knees are almost as high as their chest, and they back round a lot, and you can see the changes in their breathing, and it's just not a comfortable position at all. I say, well, if you try, because we've done this before, just keep your knees bent, but bring your feet onto the ground and kind of move them slightly far out, then there's space for your torso to be in the middle, there's space for your back, your hips can be on the ground, doesn't even need a block, and your lower limbs feels comfortable because the feet is on the ground. You have the movement of straightening them whenever you need to. How does that feel? I was like, that actually feels okay, and I can actually breathe better, and I sit much more comfortable. But then I can't sit cross-legged. So that seems to be always the question, but I can't do the things that everyone else is doing. So in exercise, is there a certain request or certain wish that you want to be able to do what someone else is doing? Or should we use exercise as a way and a mean to discover what our body is and how our body is built, what our uniqueness is and how to kind of honor and work with the uniqueness.
So you're actually looking at an evolution. You, as a psychiatrist, you are aware that we learn by imitation.
Mm.
So what happens is that, from the earliest age, we teach children how to do things. They watch us and they see, when we pick things up and we move things around, that okay, that's how you pick things up and move things around. And we get up and walk, and the child gets up and, so there's a whole, there becomes a learning by imitation. I think that we keep that methodology. We do look to other people and we copy other people and we imitate. And I know they say that imitation is a form of flattery. However, what it does is it means that there has to become a stage where we stop imitating or stop listening to how we think something ought to be or should be based on either a picture or what we're told, and begin to discover and move away from that and actually embody it for ourselves. So I think that what we're discussing here is an evolution from that point of imitation, competitiveness, and, look what I can do and you can do, and almost a sense of, actually, I'm really okay with myself and I'm going on my own journey within this.
And that in itself may be imitation as well, because you see your teacher or someone else in the class already doing it. It's like, oh, you recognize that's the evolution in the practice.
Mm.
Now I'm going to imitate that. I'm going to try to find my own angle.
Mm. And I wish more people would do that. I really do.
I think that would be a good idea.
Because one of the biggest questions is, within that, I mean, this is another definition, is this idea of Shira Samyama. It means when you get to that stage, actually you're looking at mastering something. You're not using your body and going, am I doing this right? It's almost a flip, that actually you just know that you're doing it in the most appropriate way for you at this point in time. So you're not looking to feed insecurity or also hand individual power over to someone else. You're actually looking at it in completely the reverse way.
And I think that's very important to build awareness towards as well, because I think one common use, I think that's going to be the term I settle with. One common use of exercise nowadays is actually also about confidence and self-image as well, because sometimes, or a lot of the time, we use exercise in order to build a certain physique that we want to strive for. And our body shape is very much linked to our body image, and for a lot of people, actually, that links to our own confidence and self-image. The experience that I have had, especially with patients and talking with people in general, is it sometimes feels like the more you strive for perfection in a certain physique or certain body image, the closer you are towards your own target. Sometimes actually there's more insecurity, because I don't know how exactly to explain it, but almost the drive towards that state is driven by the insecurity itself. And it becomes very, very difficult to move away from the target, because I almost felt like if you no longer maintains it, then suddenly the identity or the confidence or the self-worth that you link to a certain physique or certain weight goal or certain body fat percentage, like everything kind of reduced at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's a little like we see this a number of times, is that actually you have a purpose about something, you have a role on something. Let's say you are a parent, and what happens is that role suddenly changes when the child leaves home. You then kind of feel very lost. If something has been taken away and you don't know where it is. And the same is true with working on the body as well, is that if the focus is that I will be happy if I look a particular way, and if other people perceive me in a particular way, what happens when that becomes lost? because actually there's a sense of role and a sense of identity that's caught up in all of this.
And I think you hit the nail right on the head with that one, which is actually, is the perception about from other people, is it from yourself?
Mm.
Sometimes, or a lot of the time, especially on the aesthetic side of goal, I feel like the focus is very much external. It feels like how other people see me, like how do I look in a photograph? But of course, you're going to show the photograph to someone else, or you share it on your dating profile. I don't know, and that the validation comes a lot more externally. And actually, in a lot of ways, internally become more and more insecure because you place a validation outside, so you're not empowering yourself to be validated by yourself and by your own success or your own achievement.
Mm. So there has to be a cohesion between just not the physical aspect of it, but also the mental aspect of it. There has to be a correlation between these within the direction that we go in and the goals that we set and how we set those goals and the intention behind setting those goals. And I also think that almost in a way, we can use exercise, we can use yoga, for physical problems. We can also use them as a recreational activity, both of them.
Mm.
We can also use both of them to understand something about ourselves if we move in both of them through that kind of initial evolution to understand and learn from the mistakes that we make. So what I see is this idea of understanding something about myself as part of a journey, whether it's exercise or whether it's yoga, as I get to a point where everything has to change. Whether I'm running marathons or whether something has to change in order for me to evolve and move forwards.
Mm.
And I think this is the question with both of them, is that we get to a point where we need to make choices, decisions, and priorities, where something has to leave us so that something else can come.
Yeah. As you're saying that and talking about the recreational side of exercise, maybe it's for recreation, but maybe it's one way of evolving exercise as well. Because I recognize I mostly spoken about exercise that I do or we can do on our own, but actually there's also social side of exercise as well, isn't it? Like there's team sports, there are you play against each other, or play with each other, and that's actually really so social side of exercise where there's a lot of interaction, there's a lot of teamwork, there's a lot of communication that's required. And that part of exercise is important too.
Yeah. It is also, I think, I so often it's told to me that traditionally yoga was taught on a one-to-one basis. So one person to another person. And it was taught so that message or that knowledge was adapted and refined for that individual. And it was passed down from teacher to student in this way. However, it's quite lonely. So one of the benefits of having a group class is that you get to hang out with other people and talk to other people, and you get to, just kind of do things with other people and socialize, and it becomes
some coconut water.
Yeah, it becomes a recreational activity. There's a real sort of difference. It becomes very social.
But also can be inspirational as well. I remember going to some yoga class where other people being able to see each other's practice, and it's like, oh, that's a posture or that's a certain practice that I wouldn't be able to do now, but actually can inspire someone to keep almost as we were saying earlier on, like create a new goal because you see the possibility that's not directly from your teacher, but actually someone else is doing it. It's like, oh yeah, actually if we started together and then if they can do that, it may be possible that I can do that too. Of course, on the flip side, it can be discouraging too, because sometimes like, oh, we started together, we started this course or this class together at the same time 3 weeks ago. Well, how come I'm not progressing as much as the other people? I'll come back to discussion about, is there, when there's a social side of exercise, is it always encouraging? Is it discouraging? And how to find a balance?
But isn't it always annoying when there's always someone showing off?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I tried to think of a way to say no. It's like,
yeah, but actually,
yeah.
I mean, the same is true. I remember 25 years ago going to a yoga class, and
And you were showing off.
no, God, I wish I could have shown off back then. Now I can show off. Um, no, there was always a person in the class that was showing off, doing something and showing off. And actually, was it inspirational or was it frustrating? Actually, you just felt they needed to go to a different class rather than the class that we were in and the level that we were at.
I remember classes now I still go to. Sometimes there are people who show up 15 minutes before and they start doing all sorts of like inversions and contortioning postures. I was thinking, if you've done all these before the class start, like why are you staying for the class sometimes?
Well, it's a little like cleaning before the cleaner comes. You need to make sure that you're warmed up like really well and you've done everything before you actually do the yoga class. Don't you know about this?
No, I don't have a cleaner. That's probably why. But I learned something tonight.
Exactly. I mean, there's a whole series. I mean, it's a very interesting idea because actually I do all these different positions before the class. We then do the yoga class, and we don't do any of those positions that I do before the class. So there's a whole kind of.
Yeah.
But then this links for me to another very interesting idea, which is to do with good exercise, appropriate exercise, and the sort of the cycle of preparing, the body for something.
Hmm.
So I've worked with a number of athletes, and within this it's not just about the sport that they're doing, but it's a preparation for that. And this for
Hmm.
me is another definition of what we're doing, what we're looking at things is shura samskara. It's to prepare for something to come. So
Hmm.
for me, there has to be a preparation phase. And the preparation phase is normally quite a gentle phase to prepare for something that I'm heading towards, so that I want to have an experience of something, but then I also need to have a time afterwards to process it and to allow myself to get back out. So it's rather than just doing a handstand or doing a headstand with a breathing technique, and I prepare for that, go in and come out. But the same is true with sports as well, and exercise is that almost in a way we have to prepare to head towards a place that we're going to, and we also have to come back out of it as well.
So there's a warm up and also a warm down in
Mm,
the Western language before you do the exercise and afterward as well.
yeah.
But as you were saying about athletes, and then we talk about like a group exercise, I suddenly realized sometimes maybe I don't really play any team sports, so I can't really speak on this on a personal level. But sometimes what I observe, there's almost a celebratory aspect of exercise as well. Because I've been to like workshop to get before it is a yoga workshop where actually that we all form a circle and actually we all go into the circle at different stage and whenever we want to or not want to. And then like do a certain practice or certain sequence or certain posture and then come back out of it. Yes, there is the aspect of there's a bit of a show off, but in some way after a little while, actually there is a certain aspect where it's almost like a ritualistic or celebration. And that got me thinking, actually, in the beginning, I think I'm right, but the Olympic Games meant to be a celebration as well, because there is a certain honoring aspect to the Olympic Games. I think it's back in the Athens era, like really, really long time ago, where it's actually honoring to the gods. So there is a physical representation of our celebration and honoring within a society with exercise. And that's perhaps why may also we actually, uphold athletes or people who have good physique or physically quite strong to a high regard sometimes because there is something, you know, celebration about it.
So they're able, as an individual, we're able to get to an optimal peak within our interaction with ourselves, but also with regard to the direction that we've gone in.
Yeah.
So,
because historically, I guess in some way, again, this is going back to a long time ago when we're still hunter and gatherer. If you have stronger physique, if you, as you say, we use exercise to prepare our body to a certain way, then the person will be able to hunt for more or hunt stronger things, bigger things where you can provide more food. Or if you are in an army, having going in against war with each other in different tribes, actually you may be able to defeat more enemies, and actually you can win the honor and land and money or whatever it may be for your own tribe. So there is this aspect of it where actually, yes, back in the days, exercise was part of the preparation, wasn't it? It's kind of like athletes before their competition actually exercise this preparation so that they can compete and gain the honor and maybe the gold medal.
and moving back to the other thing that you said, which was a ritual. So exercise can be a ritual, can't it?
Yeah.
You know, I know many people that get up first thing in the morning and they go out and they do a run and they come back again, or they do a cycle and they come back. They do something. So there becomes this kind of ritual, and a ritual helps that person to cut from one aspect of a day and enter another aspect of a day. And the same is true with yoga positions, is that we can use them as rituals or part of rituals. I like what I find interesting is that each yoga position has a different effect. And when we kind of start to put them together, especially with breathing and mantras and meditative sort of practices, is that almost it's like cooking, and you are using very fine ingredients when you're doing it. So not too many onions, not too much turmeric, not too much of this, not too much of that. And so it's not too strong, but also it doesn't end up being completely bland. So the idea within putting these things together is for a function to create an effect. You know, we want an outcome from what we're doing. So I want to feel more energized. I don't want to feel depleted. Okay, so if I go to a yoga class, you know, I remember watching someone, they went to this yoga class and they did this yoga class, they came back out and they were exhausted for the whole day afterwards.
3 days.
Yeah, I said, well, why did you? And they were like, yeah, but it was great. I sweated loads and it was fantastic. And, you know, it was just it was amazing. And I was like, and so actually that's your idea of an outcome. Whereas for me, what I'm looking to do is I don't want fast food. I don't want fried food. I don't want a takeaway. I want something that is really nourishing, that's tasty, that actually keeps my energy up and keeps me going through the day and helps me to, do I making sense with this?
Yeah. And I think what you mentioned about sweating is also very interesting as well, because sometimes we almost have this, not obsession, but this strong idea where sweating is good, it's really cleansing. So the more we do, the better it will be. And I do agree in a broad stroke where actually sweating itself is part of our body's mechanism of excreting something. Most likely excess water won't get sweated out because it's actually more about body temperature. Excess water tend to get excreted by the means of urine. Water can also be excreted by parts of being feces or stools or parts of when we breathe as well. But actually, sweating is very important to help us to regulate our body temperature. So, and also it's quite healthy for our skin because it shows that there's good circulation and actually the follicles and all the glands are working. And so it's actually really, really good. But I think sometimes when we do too much of it can be very, very dehydrating and can cause a lot of issues that way, because when we sweat too much, sometimes what I see in patients as well, they don't replenish enough, or they don't replenish the right thing. They drink a lot of water, but maybe not enough electrolytes, or they drink a lot of water, but actually not enough of other kind of food groups to replenish what we have lost. I don't know if I think yoga has some perspective on this, isn't it? Because I remember reading some texts. There's something about sweating as well.
Yeah, there is. The idea is twofold. One is that your heart rate at the end of a yoga practice should be lower than at the beginning of your yoga practice. This is the first thing. We take the pulse, and quite often before our yoga practice, we always take our own pulse. And then we do a yoga practice and then take the pulse at the end. And the heart rate should be lower. This is the first thing. Second thing is if you get to the point of sweating in a yoga practice, you've gone too far. Okay, because it means that the nervous system has been agitated within this. So in fact, you find this mentioned in a number of texts. They just say that if the body sweats and shakes, it's gone too far.
So that's very interesting because almost in a lot of exercise, we encourage people to sweat by, I don't know, sometimes maybe in hot yoga too, but pushing body to a certain state where we'll actually start breaking the sweats or go to sauna after, or go to steam room after. Like that's this encouragement that sweating is good.
But why? Why? I mean, isn't it artificially? Isn't it doing something artificial to the body? I mean, what's happening in the joints? What's happening in the overall body when you do this?
I just wonder, is there a slight cultural difference as well? Because obviously yoga is from India, where the continent Asia is warmer in general. So actually, you wouldn't want to over exhaust yourself because heat can be quite exhausting, and then exercising in heat can be very, very exhausting. Whereas right now we live in England, actually the weather tends to be much colder. So especially, and also much longer as well compared to India. So actually in order to maintain a health in some way, sometimes sweating a little bit is good because we don't normally have as much experience of it.
Yeah, but if you look at the Himalayas, there, where a lot of yoga practices are, it's kind of a bit cold.
That's
So
true.
I don't sort of buy the cultural thing. I think that actually it's almost like a misappropriation of practice. So in fact, to keep warm, there are numbers of different breathing techniques. In fact, Krishnamacharya said that you actually don't need asana at all. You just need breathing techniques. You don't need the physical positions. The breathing techniques will give you everything that you need. So if you want to heat the body up or cool the body down, you can use different breathing techniques. But I think we've got in our head that we enjoy the experience of sweating, of doing all these things. And actually, there's only certain constitutions that actually should be doing something like that. So a earth and water-based constitution, a kappa-based constitution can go into a hot environment and do this. Whereas if you put any other constitution in there, it can really aggravate those constitutions.
So in some way, kind of coming back to earlier topic as well, heat itself, it can be a little bit of a prop. But should everyone be using the prop and actually do something and push the body to do something that we don't normally achieve is another question.
Exactly. I always think there's a knock-on. I always think there's a consequence and a knock-on effect from doing it. I think we need to observe that.
Yeah.
What's happening later on in the day, what's happening later on in the week.
Yeah. And what I was thinking about it and didn't get a chance to form words about my thoughts earlier on is also on props is on one hand, you can have weight-bearing exercise where the prop is quite a strong one, where you adding load onto the body, onto the joints and onto the bones and everything. The other side, and a spectrum of the prop is kind of taking away gravity. There's a lot of aqua exercise as well. When I was looking up, science behind exercise, actually it can be very helpful. As you said earlier on, actually, sometimes you look at the effects of exercise, we use exercise in water, especially like maybe physiotherapy, maybe swimming, maybe gentle stretching in water where the effect of gravity on body is being taken down a notch or quite a bit, actually then allow the body to move more freely. So after, then you feel better and you can move better or you get yourself out of pain. So that's one end of the spectrum as well. So I do wonder, is there maybe a little bit of a gray, kind of like what you said earlier on, different constitution or different issues fit into different or suit a different type of exercise? Whereas in a Western sense, let's say if you are more elderly or you have more joint problems or you are recovering from certain things, actually having less and less load on your body so that your body can move more freely again and learn the ability to move better again without pain is good. And towards one stage, once your body is very, very fit and stable and you want to gain extra strength or gain extra muscles for whatever reason, then adding load will be good.
But so this is where I see the benefits of something like, doing some sort of water-based work, exercise in water. So it really kind of helps. I see, there's lots of different areas which are really useful for people. Like walking is really useful, doing stuff in water, just gentle weight bearing with weights, absolutely fantastic. However, I want to maintain that yoga is different from these things. And that for me is an important thing, is a distinction that we don't combine these things together. Okay. It's like I've got exercise in water with music on. Enjoy exercise in water with music on. It's really helpful. Really helpful.
Yeah. But it's not the same as doing yoga practice because
Correct.
it has a different emphasis a lot of the time.
Correct.
Well, I completely agree. I think that's why I have to maintain both in a lot of ways, because yoga practice give me insights and benefit in one way, and actually exercise is quite different. And as we discussed last time, actually a lot of the time is about the transferable skills. It's actually the lessons or the reflection and insight I learned from yoga. Then I can take it back to my exercise or like my swimming recently. And actually that was really helpful because it allows me and taught me how to use my body in a different way. And that was very, very beneficial.
Thanks for today. I've really enjoyed our second part of
Thank you.
yoga and exercise.
Exactly. Can't wait for the next one.
Is it going to be a part 3?
Who knows? Let's find out.
Sounds good to me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.